However, in Egypt, where court today is due to review a petition to have the former president Hosni Mubarak released. The judge is expected to rule on a final charge of corruption which the ousted leader faces. Now, if the court upholds that petition, there will be no legal grounds for Mubarak's detention, although the 85-year-old is being retried on charges of complicity in the killing of protesters in early 2011. However, the prosecution is expected to appeal against his release, and if they are successful, they could delay his actual departure from prison for several days. Mubarak's lawyer says the court's review had nothing to do with Egypt's current political situation.
The political situation has nothing to do with the judiciary at all, and the proof is that I've been asked before if this was a political decision and if the Brotherhood was still in power, would this have happened? And I answered yes. All the previous release decisions in the cases brought against Mubarak and his sons were issued when the Brotherhood were in power. The judiciary has nothing to do with politics. The judge looks at the case, and if it merits releasing him from custody, then he will decide that. And if it requires holding him, he will decide to hold him. It has nothing to do with politics.
Speaking of politics, however, elsewhere, EU foreign ministers are to hold emergency talks on Wednesday to discuss the political situation in Egypt. Those talks were agreed to in a preparatory session by senior diplomats in Brussels earlier on Monday. Now, the President of the EU Commission, José Manuel Barroso, and the President of the European Council, Herman Van Rompuy, said the EU will review its relations with Egypt. Speaking at a news briefing, Bernardino Leon, the EU Special Representative for the Southern Mediterranean, said ministers would discuss the various options that have been put forward by member states on Wednesday. He did not rule out the possibility that that could include altering or even cutting off the amount of aid that is given to Egypt. Right, let's get some more details on what's going on in Egypt. CCTV's Adel Makhrouki is now live on the line from the Egyptian capital of Cairo. Adel, two trials in focus in Egypt at the moment, or rather court cases in focus in Egypt at the moment. The first, of course, is the review of Hosni Mubarak's case, and the other being that of the former Vice President Mohamed El Baradei. That's set for next week. What's the latest on those two cases, and will they have any impact, if any, on the political situation?
Well, first, as you said about Mubarak's case, there has been a panel from the Egyptian court that went directly to Al Tora prison where Hosni Mubarak has been held, and his lawyer is already there, Mr. Farid Eid, that we've just heard a few words from him seconds ago. They will have communication together and discussions about the petition submitted by Mubarak's defense for his release. The panel has arrived at the prison, and as we're speaking now, the talks have begun. There is a special location or room specialized for this in the prison itself, and the whole reason for that is because of the instability in the security measures of the country. It would not have been easy to transport either to conduct it in an open court. President Hosni Mubarak had two sessions of court this week. He attended neither of them because of these security problems. As for Mohamed El Baradei, the Deputy Vice President for International Affairs, he has a case that will be held within the coming few weeks. It is expected to start just preliminary investigations, and the trial will start hearing by December. And he's accused of treason for leaving his position during a critical time for Egypt. However, this one particularly does not seem to have any direct implication on what's going on. Of course, it has a hidden message behind it, is that whoever is not standing with the Egyptian transition at the moment has been considered an enemy, and cases would follow him right away. But Mubarak's case, this is the one that might have a direct implication on the security of the Egyptian transition, particularly these days. If he gets out, or at least the court decides today, this might rise the number of protests in the street, not just from the Muslim Brotherhood and the Islamic Stream, but there's also a big bunch of liberals who have been standing against the Muslim Brotherhood, but they were the ones who begun in first place the 25th of January uprising in 2011.
Indeed. Of course, at this point in time, we're going to reel in some extra perspective. CCTV's Jack Barton now joins us now live from Brussels. Jack, has a meeting of the EU foreign ministers kicked off? And if it has, what should we expect from them today?
The meeting hasn't kicked off just yet. It's going to get underway in about 1 hour's time from now. The expectation is, of course, there will be a statement that is likely to be stronger than anything we have heard so far, but the real focus is going to be what to do with the financial assistance that the EU provides to Egypt. And the real focus is going to be on development assistance, and that is a complex area because many countries don't want to pull back development funds, especially those that target the poor. Military assistance is actually quite a small part of EU funding. It's only around about 130 million euros a year. Compare that to around 1.3 billion US dollars the US provides each year. So that's not really the big topic today. But they're going to look forward and see what to do with that development aid. Some countries have already stepped in. Denmark has said it's going to stop all development funding that goes through government channels. And in terms of military assistance, Germany and Italy have already said they will be, for the time being, selling no more weapons to Egypt.
Indeed, Adele, it does seem that international pressure on the authorities in Cairo is rising. Several indicators for that. We've got that EU Foreign Affairs ministers meeting today, and of course Washington's announcement barely 24 hours ago that it's reviewing American support for Egypt. What's the reaction to that development been in Cairo?
Well, as Jack said, the major part of the EU fund to Egypt is not in the military region. It's mainly for services, mainly in transportation and water resignation. And so it's basically for the Egyptian public, and that's why the government is in a very big sense indifferent about what is going on at the EU in terms of a financial support, because they know for a fact that they will not stop the major aid bunch of the nearly 5 billion euros to the Egyptian public as not to let the entire public suffer from the lack of these services. That's one side of it. But on the other hand, it is a political battle. It is a sort of a statement. Whatever will come from that meeting, regardless to the importance of the money, is the support of the international community, particularly Europe, to what has happened in Egypt. Will Europe be supporting the new interim government and the transition or not? In any way, there have been prominent politicians from Egypt who have traveled to Brussels. They're there currently, and they've been there for a couple of days trying to push forward talks. Most of them are from the liberal powers who have been backing, who have had the blessing of the army, or they're back during ousting of President Mohamed Morsi. Also, we've heard some reports that the resigned Deputy Vice President Mohamed El-Baradei will be also there.
Indeed. We'll have to be there for the time being, though. Thank you very much for your input, gentlemen. That's CCTV's Jack Barton in Brussels and Adel Mahrouki over in Cairo. Time for a short break here on Africa Live. Here's what's coming up next.
It's a relationship of respect, of partnership. I think in many cases, actually Chinese companies win contracts fairly.
Kenya's Foreign Affairs Minister explains Africa's growing ties with China as President Kenyatta's visit to the country enters its third day. And now, the Nigerian Navy parades 4 alleged pirates accused of hijacking a fuel barge.
We follow the latest trends in global politics, economics, culture and sport, and how Africa fits into the global picture. You decide what's important.
We need a trade passport.
Africa's future will be determined by Africa.
For women's equal opportunity, for a better life.
We have to change something, and it's not the outsiders.
Talk Africa, a new voice for the world.
Welcome back. 10 minutes into the hour. Let's get back to matters with China and Kenya. Kenya's President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta is on his third day of his first state visit as head of East Africa's biggest economy to China. After signing some relatively hefty agreements worth about $5 billion with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping on Monday, Kenyatta met with Premier Li Keqiang and top political advisor Yu Zhengcheng and Chinese business representatives on Tuesday. President Kenyatta has now left Beijing to visit other cities within China, where he will be looking to intensify China China-Kenya relations, specifically in the areas of industrial and technology transfer as well. Let's get some more details on what exactly that trip is shaping up like right now. CCTV's Su Yuting is live in Beijing for us at the moment. Su, good to see you. Could you please give us more details on Kenyatta's visit after his activities on Monday and Tuesday?
Kenyatta is scheduled to leave Beijing on Wednesday, and he will visit other places and cities in China to learn more experience on economic and social development from local governments and also business sectors. Kenyatta is seeking cooperation with China in infrastructure, trade, agribusiness and also finance. And you know that Kenya really needs China's support as it strives to fulfill its goals set by the Vision 2030 development plan. During his stay in China, Kenyatta is likely to look for the transfer of technology to boost Kenya's industrialization. Back to you.
Indeed. We also know that Kenya's First Lady, Margaret Kenyatta, visited the Beijing Zoo. What details can you give us about the pact between China and Kenya with regard to wildlife protection?
Yes, Kenya's First Lady has made a visit to Beijing Zoo. It indicates that the Kenyan people attach great importance to the animal protection. China and Kenya has already made lots of joint efforts to protect the elephant, rhino and other endangered species. And you know that Kenya has already established a very special unit to eradicate poaching, and China has already made some of the financial support for Kenya. And China has already strengthened its measures to strengthen the enforcement of the wildlife conservation laws, to severely punish those poachers. And you know that always the offenders will get some of the life imprisonment by that. Back to you.
Indeed. Thank you very much for that update. That's CCTV's Su Yuting over in Beijing, giving us the latest details on President Kenyatta's first state visit over to China. Now, aside from being Kenya's 50th birthday, 2013 also happens to mark 5 decades of diplomatic ties between China and Kenya. Bilateral trade volumes between these two sides has grown by about 30% or so annually over the last couple of years. And this anniversary comes amid criticism from Western countries who accuse China of neo-colonial behavior in Africa. To examine the perceptions of Sino-African diplomatic and commercial ties, CCTV senior journalist Yang Rui spoke to Kenya's Foreign Affairs Minister, Amina Mohammed.
China started our relationship with Africa back in the 8th century. However, our country didn't seriously start engagement with Africa until a few decades ago. And yet, the growing influence of China has been criticized by Western media. And they say this is a practice of neo-colonialism in your country. What do you think of the accusation?
I think that the accusation is misplaced. Like I always say, the global marketplace is quite competitive. It is also quite small. And therefore, I actually do not think that there's any element of exploitation that's involved in the relationship that we have with China. I think it's a relationship of respect, of partnership. I think in many cases, actually Chinese companies win contracts fairly over everybody else in our countries, and they are able to execute these contracts well in the shortest time period, and that's why it has become quite, I think, fashionable and trendy for African governments to allow as many Chinese companies as we have today in Africa.
Yes, indeed, China has successfully established its formidable economic presence in Africa. But we are accused of only extracting natural resources and mineral raw materials instead of, caring for the democracy and the human rights in Africa. Do you think this criticism holds any water? Because China has long insisted that we, invest there without attaching any strings.
Well, look, I do not think that that accusation is fair, because China does have a relationship with all countries. I think its largest trading partner today is not Africa. I think its largest trading partner is the United States. The second largest is the EU. So if there are any elements of accusation, then they should be global. They should not just be directed at one part of the world. Secondly, I think that most of the work that is being done in my country, for instance, right, has nothing to do with extraction of natural resources. It has to do with infrastructure development, right, including hospitals that are being built by Chinese companies, and in some cases, it's actually support that we are receiving from the Chinese government. Now, I would not call that exploitation. I would not even, I mean, if you care about my human rights, you'll care about my rights to health, accessible and affordable health services.
Let's talk about a rather rare event in West Africa. Nigerian sailors captured 4 suspected pirates and paraded them before the media on Tuesday. The suspects were chained at the ankles at the time and they were arrested during one of only 2 successful maritime raids. The capture comes at a time when pirate attacks in the Gulf of Guinea have risen quite sharply this year. Pirate raids of West Africa's coastline have jeopardized shipping of commodities from the region, and that has sent insurance costs for that part of the world absolutely soaring. Last week, Nigeria's Navy said it killed 12 pirates in a gun battle as they tried to flee from a hijacked fuel tanker, but they captured 4 remaining survivors. Now, usually, captured vessels in that area are normally robbed fairly quickly of their cargo and all valuables and then released, while pirates escape into the seas or right into the delta.
The vessel was intercepted somewhere 10 nautical miles off Ayetoro in Ondo State. When we saw the vessel, she had a speedboat tied behind her. We approached the vessel and circled her. No one came out of the ship. It gave us an indication that something was wrong. We called her severally on radio. There was no response. And we fired a barrage of shots across her bow. At that point, the sea robbers went to the stern, threw away their weapons overboard, and asked the captain to get in touch with us. From then on, the initiative became ours, and the rest was history. We took them into custody and escorted the vessel back to Lagos waters.
From Nigeria to South Africa, here's what's coming up in business.